The melee continues.
Hello, I'm Ronnie.
I'm CJ.
Today we're going to be debating our favorite interpretations of Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse. And the reason I stressed his last name there is I'm not sure how to pronounce it properly.
Yeah, what is it? Edgers?
No,
Edgelord?
no, I think it's Eggers. The
Okay.
hard egg in the name,
Hard
hard
egg,
boiled
yeah.
egg, as this movie is a hard boiled movie.
It is indeed. It's provoked many different interpretations, many different
Yeah.
theories. It kind of feeds into that YouTube
Well,
theory industrial complex that we all kind of claim to hate, but we're all so invested in. Those of us in the cinétiste community.
I think so. I think one of the reasons it's inspired so many different interpretations is he mixed it with a lot of Freudian and Jungian symbols. So the movie's sort of like not it's muddled over what the exact meaning of things are because it could be like Freudian or Jungian, which had very different interpretations of the same object. But
Yeah, it's one of those things that like a cynical person, could look at it and see it as, oh, well, it doesn't really mean anything in particular. It's one of those things where he just slapped a bunch of imagery and things together and let audiences just figure it out. But I don't think that's the case, to be fair. I think he did have a specific spine there in terms of, like, he wanted it to be interpreted within a particular field at the very least. Like you can't say it's just about anything. That there's a certain set of boundaries in which there are right and wrong interpretations, but there's no one right and one wrong interpretation.
Oh yeah, it's pretty open. In fact, the director said that he never told either actor what the exact meaning of what was going on. The only time he kind of revealed anything to any of them was apparently Robert Pattinson told him, "I don't want to make a movie about a magical lighthouse," and he just kind of confessed it's not really a magical lighthouse. That's not what's going on.
Oh boy, so I guess that already narrows the field. That
Well,
it's whatever.
it narrows the field in terms of what Robert Pattinson's interpretation of the movie was. He wanted him in that headspace, not necessarily what's going on.
So that's not necessarily a word of God canon from
No,
Robert
no,
Eggers himself.
that's actor's motivation. That's where Robert Pattinson, maybe as his character, is coming from, but not necessarily what the movie's trying to get across.
Right. So for all we know, he told Willem Dafoe the exact opposite thing. He might have told Pattinson to play it like it's non-supernatural, and Dafoe to play it like it is supernatural.
In fact, I think Defoe is kind of playing it like he definitely is something supernatural. Should we get into the interpretations?
Yeah, I don't think we really need to bother with outlining the plot or anything, because anyone who's listening to this episode is almost certainly has seen the film and has
Oh,
seen many different theory
I tell
videos
you
and
what,
theory podcasts about it. So
this
yeah,
will.
let's just get
No,
to
no, no,
our
no. Before
favorites.
we do that, let's have a brief. You tell me 30 seconds what you think the movie's about, and then and not what it's about. Just synopsis it and see if it's any different from my synopsis.
Okay, so our setup is two wikis, two lighthouse keepers in what looks like the early 20th century in New England, and what we see throughout the film are these two men slowly driving each other insane as they get stranded in a storm. Help isn't coming, or if it is, it's too far away to tell. They lose track of time, they lose track of their sanities, and what plays out is this twisted sort of father-son dynamic in which the son tries to overthrow the father and take his place, but discovers that he gets no joy out of being the one in power.
And my interpretation or my synopsis would be Prometheus meets Proteus.
Who's Proteus?
Proteus is the son of Poseidon.
Right. Right. I
Yeah,
should know this. I like Greek myth, but
yeah, me.
I completely, I'm terrible with names. So if you recite the myth out to me, I was like, oh yeah, that. But like just hearing random names, I'm like, who is that again? But yeah, yeah, not bad. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of mythological imagery in there, quite intentional. Like certainly, like I think in Willem Dafoe's famous monologue slash curse in the middle of the
Arguably
film.
the best scene in the movie. The
Yeah,
movie's filled with great scenes, but I love that scene
oh
so
yeah,
much.
that's definitely the highlight. But yeah, I think he actually says by Neptune or something, which was
Yeah,
the
no,
Latin name
he
for
calls out
Poseidon.
to Triton as well.
Yeah, so there's a lot of very intentional mythological imagery in there. Certainly, with Poseidon/Neptune, and also, of course, I wouldn't have thought Proteus, but definitely Prometheus. With Prometheus, for those who don't know, was the Greek god who took fire from Mount Olympus and brought it down to mortals.
Wasn't he a Titan, not a god?
Oh yeah. No, I think he was a god. The Titans were, like, he worked with Zeus to overthrow the Titans. So, yeah.
I'm going to have to check that back up. But either that or God of War lied to me.
Yeah, God of War kind of plays fast and loose with
no, it
definition.
does not. It's basically a lecture.
Oh, yeah. You can trust everything this edgelord video game from the 2000s with a new metal soundtrack.
The most recent one is very heartfelt, I will say.
I'm sure it is, but I think that's like a reconstruction of the God of War mythos rather than playing it straight.
Anyway, we should probably get to the interpretations.
Okay, we probably should. My favorite interpretation is non-supernatural and thematic, in that I think it is best viewed as a meditation on power and what it does to people. I think you can view it as Robert Pattinson. What should we call them, actually? Like, the script just refers to them as old and young.
There's Ephraim Winslow, but it turns out they're both named Tom, technically.
They're both, Tom and Tommy.
Go on, sorry.
Or by some accounts, they're the same person, like having a split personality.
Yeah, here's another thing to throw in your plot. What if Willem Dafoe's not even the original Wiki? What if, like, he's just a different Tom? Like, he's not actually Tom himself. Like, he's the original.
A new Tom comes to inhabit the role, and another Tom after that joins him and gets killed, and then replaces the previous Tom.
Exactly.
Which is, my favorite interpretation is, as I said, non-supernatural. It's psychological, where what's happening and what we see is taking place primarily in Pattinson's head, and it's best read thematically as being about what power does to people, in that Pattinson wants the power that Willem Dafoe has. Willem Dafoe wants to hang on to it at any means necessary, because even though it's not really bringing him any joy, he can't imagine life without it. He needs to feel like he's in control over somebody else, and pretending to be his friend sometimes, acting like a cold, non-benevolent master at other times, like when he's ordering him around in his work. But even when Pattinson overthrows Dafoe and sees the light at the top of the lighthouse, which is a symbol of power, he can't handle it, and he dies as a result. But we get the sense that even though it seems awe-inspiring at first, it destroys him. So it's best viewed as a movie about how power corrupts and destroys people.
That's a pretty good interpretation. Mine is basically the same, but with a little more with literal supernatural elements thrown in as kind of like not a thematic commentary more than anything. It would be that basically, like what you're saying, it's all about power dynamics, and it's about him trying to steal this power. The power, although in this case would really be knowledge, since like Prometheus stole fire and basically stole knowledge and gave it to people. But I think the ironic kind of twist is that he goes up there to find, like, what's the thing behind the gods, and it's actually nothing. And I think that's what's going on, is that the big joke is that he fought for power that really doesn't exist, because he's really just god of this tiny island with no one on it now.
That's fascinating. I don't think that necessarily contradicts the former interpretation. I think, if anything, it adds to it.
There's room for both, you know?
Yeah, there's definitely room for both. I think I hadn't really thought of that power as knowledge per se. What do you think, reading it in that way, like knowledge of what in particular? Is it like knowledge in an abstract sense?
I think it's more of an abstract thing, definitely. Like, it's not like either of them is like pursuing anything, like Edgers, or see, I call him Edgers there. He once said that, like, if I wanted to do it that way, there would have been a scene where, he opens the chest and he finds like a book with loads of Cthulhu symbols, and it's like, oh, that explains what it is. Like, well, I think it's more like the light is knowledge and power, and it's just, I think, like, you're trying to seek like the meaning of it or domination over, because the whole movie is a giant power struggle, and once you kind of you become a god, it's sort of like, now what? Like, and it's like it's sort of an empty Pyrrhic victory or Pyrrhic victory.
Yeah, so what Willem Dafoe had, it was illusory. It didn't
Yeah,
even mean anything to him.
it was what he had was power when Robert Pattinson was beneath him. But now that like Robert Pattinson isn't there, it's sort of a meaningless power.
And I think that says a lot about the nature of domination in
Yeah,
general, that it only really has any force, it only really has any meaning when it's two people. It's like Hegel's master-slave dialectic, where
yeah,
the master and the slave define each other, where one can't exist without the other. In order to have domination, you need both a dominator and a dominated, because if you don't
exactly.
have someone to dominate, it ceases to be power as such. It just is
I,
capacity
I
to do.
I think that's true because you get that sense when he tells the story of how he killed like his former overseer at the logging site, like how he hated this guy so much, and then when the guy was finally dead, it was just like, oh well, I guess I'll just kind of just have a smoke now. I didn't really care after all.
Pattinson kills two different masters
Yeah,
in the text of the film. Winslow the foreman when he was working as a lumberjack in Canada, and Tom Wake the wiki when he's working in the Lighthouse. And in neither case does it really bring him any fulfillment. The oppressed overthrowing the oppressor, because in theory, well, now I get to be the oppressor, but if you've got nobody to oppress, it ceases to mean anything. It brings you no fulfillment. You don't even get freedom, really, because you haven't so much overturned that domination as you're still existing within it.
yeah, I think you're right about that because look at how desperate Willem Dafoe is to keep him on the island, like when he tries to escape in the rowboat.
To such an extent that he even gaslights him. I mean, the word gaslighting is misused a lot, but in this case, he actually does gaslight him, where he does something, then tries to fool him into thinking that the opposite thing happened, that it was Pattinson that ran at him with the hatchet instead of Defoe that
To
ran at
the
Pattinson.
to the point where a lot of audience members still believe that, like, oh no, he's telling the truth. Pattinson destroyed that boat, and just thinks that Defoe attacked him with it. Like, that's an interpretation of that scene as well.
I think it works either way, though, because either way, it means they're both still caught in the same dynamic.
That's right. It's like every scene in this movie can be interpreted like two ways, and neither really has a point over the other.
Yeah,
So
but what I like is that either way you read it, you still end up. It's kind of like you see a symbol on the ground. Like from one side it looks like a 6, from another side it looks like a 9. But you're from both perspectives. You're still looking at the same thing.
it's
It's
very
not
true.
like it can. It's not like it's a blur that can be interpreted to mean anything. It can be interpreted only as something specific, but that specificity is variable, which I think is it's the best kind of film like this. It's not like really a really wild David Lynch film like Inland Empire, where it's the possible interpretations are so variable that it's difficult for me to really enjoy a film like that, because it feels like it's such a blank canvas. But
That, that's
this,
one. That's one we could come back to because I actually do have an interpretation of Inland Empire that would take 15 minutes to explain. So
yeah, but I guess that for me is part of the problem. I mean, I like a lot of David Lynch. I mean, I'm
me too. I'm a
rewatching
big
Twin
fan.
Peaks at the moment, but yeah, that sometimes he can get so out there in terms of interpretability that it ceases to have any grounding for me
I'm
story wise. But
I'm pretty
The
much into the
Lighthouse,
ride with Lynch.
yeah, but The Lighthouse for me is not like that. It's the best kind of film open to interpretation. But I guess any final thoughts?
No, nothing really. I think I've said everything I need to say.
Okay, I guess that's The Lighthouse solved. You need not think about this film ever again.
Yeah,
We have decoded this film. We have
put
debunked all possible other interpretations. Like, yeah, we are God.
Yeah, I think put this on the future release on Blu-ray, the 15th anniversary, because Blu-ray will still be around by then, I'm sure.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Like technologies like that, they never go obsolete.
No, no.
Yeah, yeah. They'll you can put this as the audio commentary, and like even though it's only like 15 minutes, you can like space it out throughout the entire. Our words are so profound, like they will echo throughout
Yeah, I
scenes
say
together.
just put it on a loop throughout the entire movie.
Yeah, yeah. So you can keep getting it reinforced over and over again with
Over
our
again, like,
profound wisdom.
Yeah, it'll be like, why'd you spill your beans moment for the actual viewer.
Why'd you spill your beans, Tommy? Why'd you spill your beans?
And on that note, I think we should bring this one to a close.
Beans.
Beans.